Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Arvada City Council meeting for October 15th, 2018. I'll begin by calling on Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marriott. Would everyone join me in a silent moment of reflection? And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Kristen Rush, will you call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Marriott.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember McGough.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Would someone like to make a motion excusing Mayor Williams? Councilmember Jones.
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Mayor Williams from tonight's business meeting.
Okay, all members have voted. That motion passes 6-0 with Mayor Williams absent, so he is excused. Move on to the approval of the minutes of September 10th and September 17th, 2018 council meetings. Are there any corrections or additions? Okay, seeing none, we'll adopt those minutes as submitted. And we'll move on to public comment on issues not scheduled on the agenda. And we'll start with Mindy Moore. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Mindy Moore, 10149 West 55th Drive, Unit 106. First, we wanted to let the City Council know that the Arvada Housing Resource Fair on September 29th was a big success. More than 200 people came for information and guidance on housing issues, and it was a wide range of people. There were several homeless families that came, several at risk of becoming homeless, all the way up to current homeowners who were interested in building accessory dwelling units, home sharing from their homes, or help with essential home repairs. Feedback from the attendees as they left and the various resource groups, there are quite a few that were there, was that very positive. In fact, many people asked if this could be repeated at least yearly. I want to thank the many people in the city who helped us plan, publicize, and also attended the event. They provided information on city resources, answered questions on a number of things. As I imagine we're all aware from reading in the papers or other information, housing prices in the Denver metro area appear to have stabilized, both for homes and rents. They appear to have leveled out. However, rents and home prices are still a challenge for many of your residents. We hope that as the city looks at strategic goals for 2019 and beyond, you will continue to look at working with your partners to increase the affordable housing opportunities for your workforce, your seniors, and others. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. Next, I'll call on Amanda Stone.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Stone. I've been a homeowner in Arvada since 2015, and I just wanted to come today to speak briefly in support of municipal trash. My small street has probably 8 trash trucks or more going up and down the street every day, and I pay more than standard municipal rates for my trash, and I don't appreciate having to manage which trash hauler comes to my home every week. So I'm also a civil engineer, so I noticed that the heavy trucks going up and down the residential streets in my neighborhood cause quite a bit of damage on these streets that weren't designed for such heavy traffic. And I work from home on occasion, and the trash trucks in front of my house are quite disruptive. So, and in the past, in municipalities where I've lived that have had municipal trash, I've never had an issue with the contracted trash carrier. So when I moved to Arvada and bought a home, I found it kind of strange that I had to search for a carrier, and this was something in the back of my mind at all times. So I just wanted to speak in support of municipal trash for Arvada. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. Next, I'll call on Jonna Levine. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jonna Levine. I'm an Arvada resident. I'm also a co-founder, co-chair of Support Jeffco Kids. I've worked for public school funding in Jeffco since the 2004 mill bond. Sadly, we've never caught up since the cuts made following the 2008 recession. As a result of the negative factor, Jeffco, like every other school district in the state, is operating on a shortfall. In Jeffco, that cumulative shortfall is $642 million. We have an opportunity to fix things this year with Amendment 73. 73 would bring to Jeffco schools alone $134 million additional annual revenue. 92% of Colorado filers would see no increase in their state's taxes. That same number holds true for Jeffco filers. And it stabilizes the local level funding for school districts only, giving our non-residential property owners relief by dropping their rates from 29 to 24% before freezing it, and dropping the residential rate from 7.2 to 7.0% and freezing it. Amendment 73 increases the base funding for all students. Jeffco gets an additional $1,600 per pupil funding. Provides funding for full-day kindergarten. Currently, the district only receives a little more than half the funding for a child attending full-day K, putting the burden on parents who want full-day to pay a tuition of $300 per month. It increases revenue going to early childhood education. Expands the definition of at-risk students to free and reduced lunch kids. In Jeffco, that takes us from 35 to 42%. And if you look at those schools in Arvada articulations, there are 13 schools with a free and reduced lunch rate over 50%, going as high as 83%. 73 increases funding for special ed, gifted and talented English language learners, an especially large demographic in many Arvada schools. 73 would help fund recommendations brought forth by Jeffco's Safety and Security Task Force, where Arvada's own Deputy Chief, A.J. DeAndrea, was a valuable leader. And it allows our district to provide a competitive salary for our educators. Imagine what it will do for our community's economy if the folks who teach in our schools can actually afford to own a home here as well. The Arvada community has a great deal of diversity. We also have some great wealth in the neighborhoods in the far west and some families who struggle in our older neighborhoods. Doesn't every child deserve the opportunity to a well-funded education, regardless of where they live? As representatives of the Arvada community, it would serve you well to stand up for so many of these children who could actually benefit from Amendment 73. They say if you want to know what a community values, look at how its children are treated. If you want a sense of what a community hopes for the future, look at how it values its schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levine. Next, I'll call on Tara Kent.
Hi, council people.
Good evening.
My name is Tara Kent. I sit on the Arvada Sustainability Committee. I have been a resident of Arvada for 6.5 years, and I've served on the committee for the city for the last 5 years. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but not the committee, but in support of an organized waste collection system for the city. So I wanted to bring one of my visual aids today of what my neighborhood looks like and what our trash service looks like. So I live on a dead-end street, 67th Place. We have 14
if you would
homes.
like, Tara, excuse me, if you'd like to put it on that table right there, it can be put up on, and just lay it flat,
Okay.
and that'll be,
On recycled cardboard and
broadcast.
recycled paper.
there you go. There you go.
Okay. So I live on a dead-end street, 67th Place. We have 14 homes. I'm in the center of them. We have 6 different haulers, and I mapped out who is getting recycling, and only 5 houses out of 14 are actually recycling because it costs extra. We have 6 different haulers, so that equals 9 different trucks on our street per week. Nearly every single house has a child or an animal that is outside. Our street does not have sidewalks. The kids play in the street. So I'm a proponent of an organized trash collection system, in maybe districts that would only have 1 or 2 haulers trucks on our street per week. And that's mainly because of air pollution, noise pollution, safety reasons, cost, and that everybody would get recycling. So I don't know if that showed up in color, but thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for coming down tonight. Next, we'll call on Dale Mulholland.
Good evening. My name is Dale Mulholland. I'm a lifelong Arvada resident. I am also a teacher at Pomona High School. I'm here tonight to speak to you about the various education funding options that are on the table before voters and before this council tonight. The goal of the funding is to equalize and to bring a better quality education to our children, to my children, to your children, to our future. And we are in desperate need of this additional funding in Jefferson County as well as in the state of Colorado. Jefferson County receives on average $1,000 less per pupil in funding. Most of our buildings, the majority of our buildings are over 50 years old and are in dire need of repairs. In addition to that, this funding would also increase security in the buildings, which is, of course, a paramount issue in our communities today. Furthermore, it would help and retain teachers. In Jefferson County, on average, the mid-career teacher makes $12,737 less than teachers, mid-career teachers in surrounding districts. As a result, we're finding it harder and harder to attract new teachers as well as retaining current teachers, which of course impacts the quality of education that our students are receiving in their classrooms. Furthermore, in Arvada, if we are going to continue to expand further and further west with our housing and further developments out there, that would require additional schools. Schools are not free. Schools cost a lot of money. And if we're going to give our students the best quality education with the best teachers and the best technology, we need to have additional funding. Therefore, I'm asking for support of all voters, as well as the City Council, for the various funding options for our kids, because they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming down. Next up is Randy Moorman.
Good evening, Council. I have a handout for you.
Thank you, Randy.
My name is Randy Moorman. I'm on the Arvada Sustainability Advisory Committee and been doing a couple briefings for you. And tonight I'm going to talk about roads. Ballot issue 3F is on a lot of our minds, and so I thought it appropriate to talk about the impact of our current trash hauling system on our roads. We have about 11 different trash companies, according to our city website, that serve our city, meaning 11 trucks traveling up and down our neighborhood streets. Trucks cause tremendous damage. They're actually the heaviest vehicle that is on our neighborhood streets. Each trash truck is equivalent to 1,000 to 1,400 vehicles per day in terms of road damage. Some recent studies from the state of Minnesota showed that 86% of the road wear in that state and alleys was due to trash trucks. And also some other cities have found that they could extend the life of their roads by limiting the number of trash trucks by up to 5 to 10 years. And I know when we did our own residential hauling study back in 2011, we found that if we changed our system from an open market hauling system to an organized system, we'd reduce our daily trash truck traffic by 82%. And as far as the cost to the city goes, some studies in that box and that handout I gave you, recent studies from Fort Collins and some cities in Minnesota show that if they changed from, again, an open hauling system to one that was organized, the cities could see up to $300,000 in savings a year on their road maintenance. Of course, with more trucks on our roads, that's also a safety risk that we need to be thinking about as well. The Department of Labor Statistics says that waste collectors have one of the most dangerous jobs in our country. Their fatality rate is 10 times higher than the national average. And of course, additional truck traffic on our roads is a risk to our children and our pets and our neighborhoods. Also, it's an additional air and noise pollution problem. The city of Fort Collins found that trash trucks generate between 200 and 300 tons of CO2 emissions a year, in addition to nitrogen oxide and particulates. And that if they changed to an organized trash hauling system, they would reduce those emissions by 53%. So there's a lot of huge advantages to us looking at changing our hauling system, and we're very eager and willing to work with the council on doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming down. Next, I'll call on Katie Winter. Good evening.
Hi, good
Welcome.
evening, Premier Pro Tem Marriott and council members. Thank you so much for the time tonight. My name is Katie Winter. I'm an Arvada resident. I have lived here since 2015, since I relocated from New York. When I was relocating from New York to Colorado, no one bothered to tell me, besides the beautiful mountains, how different things would be on this side of the Mississippi. So I learned fairly quickly about schools and education and some of the differences from my native land of New York to Colorado. And it's fabulous and phenomenal. And our schools here in Colorado do a great job providing for all of our students to have a phenomenal education. Because as by Constitution, every child who turns 5 deserves a quality education, no matter where they live in the United States or in our state of Colorado. However, there's 3 very critical funding measures on the ballot this year, and 2 in particular that I'm helping with as a part of the We Are Jeffco campaign. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that Arvada is well, I shouldn't have to draw your attention, you know. Arvada is a large and diverse city, and every day it changes more and more and more. And I think that Arvada is at a place to grow, and to grow very strong in the next future. In fact, at a recent City Council State of the City address, I'm pretty sure that it was Congressman Perlmutter that said, Arvada's on a roll. Arvada is a great place to live, learn, work, and play. And he stressed learn, because at that speech, he was most impressed talking about Red Rocks Community College and their recent expansion, and also the school system, as well as the great city of Arvada. So I would encourage you to think forward, think about the future, and think what's ahead. There's probably a couple more people like me that might be coming this way. What is Arvada's identity? What are we becoming? How do we look back at our strong roots of this city and hold true to those core values that are ingrained in every piece of our fabric? But how do we allow this city to grow and expand in a responsible way that embraces all of our new residents and all of our future scholars who one day might be sitting in the seats you hold today? All of our Arvada schools are really unique, and I'm sure you've been inside of almost every single one of them. We know Arvada High School needs $14 million in renovations to continue to serve that community. We also know that we need to build new schools out in the west side of town for that expanding community and the students and families that chose to move to that area. I'm really proud to say I have 2 little boys, one at Drake Elementary School, middle school, and another son over in the Golden community. I love exploring Arvada. I love being close to Golden, but I hate hearing about losing teachers and staff to Boulder and Denver and Littleton and Cherry Creek. It quite frankly breaks my heart to hear people moving away from Arvada because they just couldn't find what they needed to be happy here. I think there's a lot of things to be happy about Arvada. I'm thrilled to see you here tonight to learn more about all of the funding measures that could impact our Arvada schools, and I look forward to your leadership in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down tonight. Next, I'll call on Lori Woods. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Lori Woods. I'm an engineer by trade, so public speaking isn't my strong suit. You'll have to forgive my nerves a bit. I'm a Colorado native and have lived in Arvada since 2007, when my husband and I moved back to Jeffco to raise our children. I grew up in Thornton until high school, when my single father transferred me to a Jefferson County school because he felt the likelihood of a successful college career depended on me attending a high-performing high school. You see, in those days, it seemed like Jefferson County was the premier school district in Colorado. I thoroughly believe that that strong education allowed for my continued success through college. Fast forward 20 years, and I'm standing before you asking you to help ensure the future of my own 3 children. I currently serve on the board of directors of their charter school here in Arvada. Last week, the Lincoln Academy Board voted to formally endorse the Jeffco Bill and Mill and Bond ballot initiatives. As a member of our board, I've become keenly aware of the great schools, or the great needs, our facilities improvements, and our competitive compensation at our school. We typically run our teacher salaries at about 90% of the school district so that we can afford to maintain our own facilities. Unfortunately, most of our teachers and staff can simply not afford to live in Arvada right now. Many of them drive from places like Erie and Commerce City. Others that do live here have 2 to 3 roommates or 2 to 3 jobs. All the while, these teachers plan tirelessly, stress over their test scores, spend their own money on classroom supplies, and attend night school in hopes of becoming even better at what they do. I am scared to imagine just how long these wonderful teachers will drive past higher paying jobs in other school districts to come to our old and cold building. I do not want to simply become the state's best training ground where teachers get through the hardest years of their career, learn how to be highly effective contributors, and then leave our kids for a district that they can support their own families in. You'll notice that I mentioned our old and cold building. Our facility has a lengthy needs list that includes the replacement of a nearly 100-year-old building. Smaller projects include HVAC, security, and renovated parking. Luckily, the district has allotted 10% of the bond funds to charter schools. I would ask that you formally endorse Jeffco 5A and 5B. I am grateful for your leadership here, and I would please ask that you would speak out in support of our local children and their futures. Please join us in building a strong future for Arvada. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Next, I'll call on Rachel Smallwood.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Rachel Smallwood at 6108 Route Court, 80004. I'm here also to talk about the education funding measures. I think that people have made a lot of really good points, so I'll try to be brief, although sometimes I think I'm going to be and then I kind of ramble on. But so I think that you've already, or perhaps people are expecting you to come out well, you've already come out in support of 3F, but I think also 6E for the fire district, and I think that's really great. But I think that our public schools play as valuable of a role in our community as our fire department and our roads do. So I would hope that you consider supporting Amendment 73 and 5A and 5B, especially since just last year, Jeffco's school board had to consider closing 3 Arvada elementary schools, Swanson, Peck, and Fitzmaurice. All those schools I would love to see stick around, but especially Swanson because it has the autism lab. We really need to make sure that we show the community that we value all of these schools, especially the one that is serving a special needs population, and that we understand that we need to keep good teachers, that we need to fund our schools, that we need to make it a priority like everything else that is valuable to us as a city. So I hope that you'll support those measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for coming down. Next, I'll call on Denise Mund. Good evening.
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And this is my first time, so bear with me. My husband and I have lived in Arvada for more than 32 years. We both run small businesses, and we've raised our 4 children here. I've been active in my child's education and know probably better than most the financial situation of the schools. And I'm here to say that I am in opposition to 5A, 5B, and Amendment 73, and I'd like to tell you why. 5A would be a $33 million a year tax increase. They say it's going to go to attract and retain good teachers, but the problem is 50% is allocated toward raising compensation, but Para's retirement costs will increase $12.5 million over the next couple of years. That leaves only $2.5 million for actual salary increases, and that's about 1% for each person in the district. It doesn't amount to anything. 5B is asking for $567 million in debt. Your ballot will tell you the total cost on that is $997 million. That's almost $1 billion. And it's high because the first few years there will not be any interest payments on that debt. So that means we're going to be paying an extra $150 million in just debt. That's not right. That's the kind of financial schemes that brought the residential industry down a few years ago. And so I would like to see them go back to the drawing board. Once a bond is approved, there's a certain ceiling, as you probably know. If this one goes through, then they won't fix it and come back with a better solution. We know that Arvada's schools are growing, especially on the northwest part of town. And currently in this proposal, Ralston Valley High School, which is bursting at the seams, gets less than Evergreen and Conifer High School. How will the schools in the Ralston Valley articulation area be able to handle all of the new students if they don't get more of this bond measure? And instead of actually going towards new schools in that area that needs them, the debt is planned to go towards like landscaping and lighting and things that really are not of consequence. I'm also opposed to Amendment 73, which is a $1.6 billion tax increase in the Constitution. And so it would be extremely hard to change if the economy were to change. The numbers that I have seen show that Jeffco will lose their money to Denver, and we will not see it here in Jeffco. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. So that's all the public comment I had on people who turned in sheets. Is there anybody else who would like to make public comment on items not on our agenda? Come on down, sir. If you'll give us your name and your address and tell us what you're here about.
Thank you all. I'm here in support of 3F. I thank you all for your the resolution supporting 3F. 3F is our local issue that would widen Ralston Road between Allison and Garrison, and 72nd between Kipling and Sims, and also provide for an underpass at the railroad crossing just east of Oak Street. We need to come to the voters because we're letting bonds, and Tabor requires that. So important to note that this does not raise taxes, and just as a way of, you guys all know, but everyone else may not know, we fund capital improvement in Arvada through our sales tax and by ordinance through the city charter. And so we have a stream already of tax funds to pay for these bonds. We are retiring bonds this year that are now 20 years old, and this money will be spent on capital improvement either way. So it's important that we do these two projects now because the cost of borrowing that money is actually much less than it would be for us to cash finance that or save that money over a period of time. In any case, thank you for your support, and I hope everyone supports 3F.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming down.
He didn't state his name and his address.
He said his name was T.O.
No,
Owens.
he didn't state it. So could you state it for the record, please?
Yes, Mr. Pfeiffer. Sorry, T.O. Owens, 8531 West 71st Circle.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to make public comment on items not on our agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that public comment period and we'll move on to our item A, which is a presentation from the representatives of Jeffco Public Schools regarding ballot questions 5A and 5B. Welcome. Why don't you start by introducing yourself and then go ahead.
Absolutely. Good evening. I'm Tammy Schiff. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Jeffco Public Schools. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marriott and council members for your time this evening on behalf of Jeffco Public Schools. So my role this evening is to provide you with a factual overview of our ballot questions 5A and 5B, and then my friends at the bench here will join me in their commentary. And we're going to get everything going here. There we go. At Jeffco, we have a saying that says, keep the main thing, and the main thing is learning. It's important, the diagram here is kept simple for a reason. Readiness for learning is about all the things that need to be done and we can provide to students as they come to school ready to learn. Conditions for learning refers to our buildings and our teachers and our staff and our equipment so that the learning can happen in the end. You were provided some handouts earlier this evening, and the slide projection, if you will, is a lift off of those. I thought that would be easier for you to follow along with that. Okay, so how big is Jeffco? Well, I think you all know that Jeffco is the second largest school district in the state of Colorado. We proudly serve nearly 86,000 students every day at 155 schools. We have nearly 40 or more than 4,700 teachers on staff and employ 14,000 employees in Jefferson County. That makes us the largest employer in Jefferson County. Of those employees, nearly 2,700 of them live in Arvada. That's 20% of our employees. We cover 770 square miles and graduated over nearly 6,000 students last year. If you open your documents, and those of us in the room and projecting can see, the side on the left is the orange section, and that relates to ballot question 5A, the mill levy override. So what is a mill levy override, we may ask? And some of this maybe some of you have been through before, but for your viewers at home and our audience, I'm going to step through this rather quickly so that we have time for other commentary. A mill levy is basically a voter-approved property tax that provides operating funds for our schools. It goes into the general fund, and these funds are used for people and materials to support the learning. The Board of Education voted in late August to put a $33 million mill levy override tax question on the ballot. You can see below that in your documents that the tax impact is roughly $2.10 per month per $100,000 in residential value and $8.47 per month for $100,000 in non-residential value, and that's the property tax impact. Over on the right-hand side, you will see a lift of the ballot language as it will show up in your mailboxes, likely in the next couple of days. And I'll go over those 5 points of where the mill levy money is going. Importantly, expanding STEM programs for all of our students, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, and career technical opportunities. And this means programmatic opportunities, and we'll get to the business of buildings in just a few minutes. Attracting and retaining high-quality teachers to ensure that the district is competitive with our surrounding districts in the metro area. This includes compensation and benefits for teachers and staff, but importantly, does not include any additional compensation for senior district administration, and that's part of the restrictions and accountability. Improving student safety by increasing mental health and counseling services, again, pointing to people and services for our students. Important in this day and age when teen suicide and mental health resources are in dire need for all of our students. Updating aged and outdated materials. This includes both the traditional textbook and printed materials, as well as, importantly, technology materials, online resources, online educational resources, that sort of thing, and increasing early childhood education programs. In the next piece, you will see the pie chart, which breaks out exactly how these funds are going to be divided. 50% goes to increasing our competitiveness with surrounding districts in the form of teacher compensation. 20% is focused on the school safety and security, including the mental health and counseling resources. 10% expanding career and technical and STEM options for all students. 10% improving the classroom materials and technology, and 10% for full-day early childhood education programming. You'll notice that, importantly, that there are restrictions and accountability measures for both 5A and 5B built into the ballot language. As I said, none of these funds on the mill levy will go to senior district administration. The spending is going to be reviewed by a standing committee of the Board of Education, the Financial Oversight Advisory Committee, and the funds are also going to be subjected to an annual independent audit. So moving over to the right side of your document, the green section, this is about the bond, the $567 million ballot question for a bond. B, buildings, we're all about education, right? Follow the alphabet. So a bond is essentially a one-time infusion of capital to the district that can be used only for construction and school capital improvement programs. It's essentially like a mortgage where it's selling the bonds in the market, we get the infusion of capital, and then yes, over time we pay it back through the tax question. It does have a tax impact to both residential and non-residential property owners. You can see that. It's $1.81 per month per $100,000 in value for residential homeowners, and $7.28 per month per $100,000 in value for non-residential property owners. Likewise, on the right-hand side is the lift off the ballot language for the bond and where the uses will be. It's very much focused on adding career and technical education facilities. In particular, the plans are to build a second Warren Tech large facility in the southern part of the district to accommodate the hundreds of students that sit on the waiting list trying to get into our Warren Tech programming. Upgrading safety and security in school buildings. This is locking doors, hardware, equipment, cameras, secure vestibules, those sorts of things. Repairing and renovating and equipping and reconstructing school buildings to ensure that schools are more safe and efficient. Constructing and furnishing and equipping and supporting, needed school buildings and classrooms all around the district. You can see in the pie chart how that is spread out. 60% of it will be focused on bringing all schools and classrooms to a quality standard so that there is equity and parity across the district, both within our neighborhood schools and in new developing areas in construction and growth. Reinvesting in established schools and communities by 20%. 10% going to accommodating the growth, which is new schools in addition, and 10% supporting our charter schools. So essentially, the bond package, the $567 million, is really part of a 6-year capital improvement program, which gets infused also every year with an annual capital transfer of about $23 million. So the total funds available for all of our capital improvement that is shown in the following sheets, and I will direct your attention to the second handout, which looks like this as a cover. And this is our flip book of all of our new construction and the various Arctic areas around the district, the articulation areas, and we'll identify exactly what's going and what's going where. And you can see on the page focused on new construction and major additions that there is in fact a K-8 school planned for Arvada, as well as several additions. And if you give me a second, I'm going to flip to those quickly. So in the additions, Arvada High School, Foster Elementary, Pomona High School, Oberon Middle School, Ralston Valley High School, and Three Creeks K-8 are planned for significant additions. Many, many other schools, and you'll see as you flip through the pages for the 4 articulation areas for Arvada, will all be getting touched. And that's the important part of this 6-year program, is that every school in the district is going to benefit from these funds. So you'll see Arvada, Arvada West, Pomona, and Ralston Valley in the following pages, and each of them have a grid sheet that looks like this, and I'm going to put it on the table for just a second. Oops, it won't work. Never mind. I'm going to flip to this. There you go. Never mind. I have an example in the presentation. And we did a sheet like this for every articulation area in the district, as well as for each school. And reading across it, you can see how the building is in its current state by the colored bar along the left-hand side, and where it will be in its future state. We built out a complete future funding website essentially, which has all of this information and more, including an interactive map. So any of our residents in Jefferson County can dig deep, look at all that they want to know about where this money is going and how their particular favorite school will be improved. I'm going to glaze over very quickly because it's in the documentation, the Constitutional Amendment 73, which also intends to provide necessary school funding for all schools in Colorado. It's a constitutional amendment, so it requires the statewide electorate to vote on it and pass it by 55% statewide. It will generate $1.6 billion statewide for education, and it moves Colorado near, but not quite at, the national average for school funding. You can see on the next slide how it will benefit Jeffco Public Schools, approximately $1,600 additional per pupil, $134 million annually, and the funding is going to go to all public schools, including charters. And with that, I will pass the microphone to our board member, Mrs. Lassell.
Allie, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us tonight. I don't know if this is going to work, but I do have something up here. We are constantly hearing from Jeffco teachers who have second and third jobs to make ends meet. We want teachers whose only job is to educate and inspire our students. We hear from experienced teachers and principals who have found employment in surrounding districts, earning up to $10,000 to $20,000 more than they can in Jeffco. I know an excellent principal right now who is being heavily recruited by another district who will probably go next year if things don't change. We are losing high-quality people because we can't compete with surrounding districts. One of the reasons we can't compete is because surrounding districts passed their mill and bond asks in 2016, while Jeffco did not. It is important to note that Arvada is, as a city, has de-bruised years ago, so you have been able to keep up with inflation. The district gets our money from the state. We are still subject to Tabor. We have lost ground. My fellow colleagues and I unanimously voted to ask Jeffco voters for more funding for our schools. We did this because Jeffco's needs are great and well-defined by our staff. We have the responsibility to provide updated, safe, secure learning environments for students, protect prior taxpayer investments and maintain buildings, and accommodate growth, which is why we are asking for a $567 million bond. If voters pass 5B, in Arvada, every school will receive safety and security upgrades and improvements to their learning environments. You will receive 6 school additions, and yes, a new school is slated for Leiden Rock. If voters pass 5A, 50% of the dollars will go to compensation, allowing us to catch up with surrounding districts who were able to pass their mills and bonds in 16. Did you know that if Jeffco had Denver's mill levy dollars, we would have $120 million more to invest in our students and schools annually? If we had Boulder's mill dollars, we would have $86 million more to invest in our schools and students annually. Cherry Creek, $85 million more annually. We are asking for $33 million for teacher compensation, safety and security, and mental health, career and tech ed programming, such as STEM, and resources for our classrooms. Jeffco students are worth the investment, and the return on investment is incredible. Our students, teachers, and schools are constantly recognized, both locally and nationally, for their achievements. I am an elected official, like you. We have common issues that require collaboration and support, and I always look forward to and appreciate our quarterly discussions we have together to discuss Arvada schools. As elected officials, we have to make tough decisions that impact thousands of people, tasked with representing and serving our communities. People look up to you all and expect you to represent them. Arvada students and schools have so much to gain from 5A and B. We are asking you as leaders of our community to be partners in education, to pass a resolution endorsing 5A and 5B, This is not a partisan issue. This is about our collective civic responsibility to educate tomorrow's leaders, employees, employers, and future residents. Thank you. Mr. Rupert?
Good evening, Mr. Rupert. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I appreciate it very much. As an elected official, I reflect on why we were elected and the point of our really implementing the values of the communities that elected us. And I think it's important as we consider this evening that we look at what's important. You know, I look at, I value safe and efficient roads. You're asking voters for a continuation of funding for 2 specific road projects that will hopefully improve the safety of the drivers and the pedestrians and the cyclists, and from our point of view, also importantly, the children that go to school adjacent to those projects. That's valuable to me, and I intend to support it. We need to support and pay for the things that we value. I value public safety. I recognize that the city actually pays for the school resource officers in many of our schools. I value their impact on the school when the darker parts of society find their way into our schools. I value that, and we need to pay for that. The question is whether or not we are valuing education. Our founding documents seem to suggest that we do, that we say things like we value the American dream, we value the pursuit of happiness. We want people to lift themselves by their bootstraps. Well, these words and slogans seem to suggest that we value the individual opportunity, not the right, but the opportunity to pursue these things. But is there really an opportunity to pursue these things without an education, without the fundamental building block to participate effectively in our economy? And so I ask you to consider that. I don't want a society where if you're born to wealth or privilege, you have a way of making it, but if you're not, you're on your own, and it's too bad. That's not the sort of thing that I think we ought to be valuing or reflecting. So I'm asking you this evening to take a stand in support of high-quality public education, so every child has a reasonable shot to pursue happiness, achieve the American dream, and lift themselves by their bootstraps. If these are our values, then we have to pay for them. We seem not to value these things in Colorado. We're near the bottom of the barrel in funding education here. We seem not to value it because we are at the bottom of the barrel in compensating our teachers. We pay less for our teachers than every one of our neighboring states. Jeffco also seems to have trouble supporting these values. Jeffco has the 2nd lowest bond financing among metro districts. The result is that we have trouble maintaining our aging facilities and building new facilities to serve future generations. We have the 2nd lowest mill levy override funding in the metro area. The result is that we have trouble competing with our neighboring districts to retain and attract the teachers that'll be serving our children. If we want Jeffco to provide high-quality education in the future, we've got to pay for it. If we want a qualified teacher in every classroom, we've got to make sure that we are paying them a competitive salary. If we want high-quality educational environments and we want them to last, then we have to be willing to pay to build and to maintain them. So I'm asking you tonight to please take a position in support of these values. Support 5A and 5B. Ask yourself, do we really value every person getting a fair shot to succeed? Do we really value giving every child the tools to participate effectively in our economy? Do we really want to prepare the workforce of the future rather than simply complaining if they fail in the future to be equipped to compete in the global economy? You, as elected leaders, should be willing to affirm these values, and I hope you are. Arvada City Council has taken a position in the past to allow developments like Layden Rock, like Candela's, and others on the west side. You ought to also be willing to take a position to pay for the schools that will be supporting the children living in those homes. So I ask you to please pay attention to, the voters are paying attention to what you're doing. Please lead us in your affirmation of our core values and the responsibility to pay for those core values. Please support 5A and 5B this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rupert. Call on Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marriott. Thank you so much for that incredible presentation. Really appreciate all of you that came out and spoke in public comment on the issue as well. Arvada is growing, there's no question about that, and we support the growth and development up here of this city. 6 additions in schools, I was taking some notes here, 6 school additions and a new school in Arvada alone. Teacher salaries, STEM needs, career and tech ed needs. This is important, and you know, as Mr. Rupert said, we are supporting the growth and development, and it is important that we support the schools as well. I move that we as a council support ballot questions 5A and 5B.
Okay, so we have a motion to support 5A and 5B. I will call on Councilmember Pfeiffer next.
Thank you. I would second the motion, even though we don't traditionally do it, because I think I wanted to make the motion as well. We're very supportive of this question, or these questions. I will say that it is important to pay in today's dollars than tomorrow's dollars. So when you're looking at bonding, I think it's wise of a district to look at bonding in today and paying it back over time with the rates we have today. I will say that the teachers are the fabric and our schools are the foundation of our communities. That's what they are. And I do have a value system. And I think that the schools shape our community. They shape who we are. Arvada is very special. And it's with our partner groups, like the school district, the fire district, that make it that special. And unwavering, I will be supporting your motion.
Okay, next I'll call on Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate members of the school board coming and talking to us tonight, and the community, and for your feedback. I am a product of Jeffco Schools. If it weren't for Mrs. Kalman, my first grade teacher, and Mr. Munson, my 6th grade teacher, who I still am friends with on Facebook, and all of my teachers at Golden Junior High School, Mr. Carpinello was the worst teacher because he made us work hard. And he helped me learn math. To Mr. McGinnis, who was my pottery teacher at Golden High School, and that was just an easy A. So I appreciate those teachers for sure. But the reality is that I believe that all of my teachers throughout my career in Jeffco as a student helped develop me as a person, as a productive member of society, who could, I don't know if it was, but somebody said, who might be sitting in these seats one day. And I'm sure that when I was a young man, there were people advocating for me as well in that same right. Education is paramount to who we are as individuals and to my children. I have a senior, actually he just graduated, thank goodness. He's one of those on the statistics there that graduated in May. But I have a sophomore at Ralston Valley High School. And it's my hope that their experience in education will be like mine. And so for that purpose, I also support the motion that Ms. Miller made, and I appreciate her making that motion of support, and I hope that the rest of council will follow suit.
Okay, Councilmember Ford.
Well, I came here tonight undecided about these ballot issues, and more because of process than value of education. As an educator for 20 years and a former high school teacher, my value is definitely with education. And it is shameful, I think, even 30 years ago when my husband and I first moved to Colorado, it was amazing to us the lack of funding for schooling here in a very highly educated state. like Katie, I came from the East, and we had more funding for our students, although it was hard to see it because our schools did not look like the schools out here. Our schools were far worse looking. When I first moved to Colorado and looked at some of the high schools, to me they were like junior colleges, as opposed to the schools that we had back east that I taught in. But when I look at the amount per month that you're asking for, it's so little. You know, people spend far more on coffee than education. And so I do support these ballot measures. I think it would be nice if we could get our Jefferson County schools up to par with our neighboring schools, especially teacher salaries, because honestly, since I taught in the early, mid-1980s, we're still dealing with the same issues: lack of school funding, lack of teacher salaries. You know, there are many teachers, even in the universities, I'll say, that have PhDs, like myself, who were making pittance with the degrees. And so I think it really is shameful. And so from that standpoint, I thank you for the arguments that you made tonight. And your viewpoints and what you've expressed, because I'm in total agreement with it. So thank you.
Councilmember McGough.
Thank you. Like Ms. Ford, I did spend some time in the classroom, 3 years at the high school level, and I also spent 25 years in the prison system as an administrator. Sometimes I think that contrast is a good one, because I could recognize on each of my days in the prison system the lack of educational opportunity or achievement by many of those who were confined. I think that good schools are definitely, as Mr. Rupert indicated, good schools are a reflection of our values and what we want for the future. I strongly support the motion of Ms. Miller to support the request. I think both 5A and 5B are good proposals. It's hard to argue against improved education, improved safety, counseling, getting the right supplies, books, and technology, and early education programs, as well as good buildings in which to conduct our education. So I support this very strongly. I appreciate the very informed presentation by the community members, those who spoke in support before the formal presentation, and those who made the formal presentation. So I will be voting for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you for all your comments. There is a motion on the floor, so if everybody please vote. Okay, all members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 noes. So a motion of support for Jeffco Initiatives 5A and 5B is passed. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Okay, so next we have under new business, our consent agenda. Someone like to take the consent agenda? Mr. McGough.
Thank you. Yes, I move approval of the consent agenda. That's 2018-445, or better stated as Resolution 18-100 and Resolution 18-101.
Okay, so the motion is for approval of the consent agenda. All members have voted. That passes 6-0 with Mayor Williams being absent. The next up, we have resolutions. First one is 2018-455, a resolution authorizing a First Amendment to an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Arvada and Apex Parks and Recreation District. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this resolution would, and First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement, would allow the city and the Apex Parks and Recreation District to collaborate on the design, construction, maintenance of the Harold D. Lutz Sports Complex Pump Station and related obligations. This is basically a further collaboration of the improvements to the Lutz Sports Complex in association with the Apex bond measures and improvements. Reflects the city and Apex working together to make sure that we have the adequate infrastructure to properly irrigate the new athletic fields at the Lutz Sports Complex, and staff is certainly recommending approval of the resolution.
Okay. Any questions or action by council? Mr. Pfeiffer.
Go ahead and make the motion if there's not any questions. Seeing none, I'll move that resolution 102, a resolution authorizing a First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Arvada and the Apex Parks and Recreation District regarding the design, construction, and maintenance of the Harold D. Lutz Sports Complex Pump Station and related obligations be approved.
Okay, so the motion is for approval. All members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 nos, and Mayor Williams is absent, so that motion carries. Next up, we have Resolution R 18-103, a resolution endorsing amendments Y and Z for Fair Maps Colorado redistricting reforms. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. Before you tonight, this resolution endorsing amendments Y and Z is about redistricting and a more fair and appropriate method for redistricting. One of the, I think probably maybe the only nearly unanimous vote of the Colorado General Assembly during the 2017-2018 legislative session was in the area of redistricting reforms. One of them was focusing on the redistricting of congressional seats. The other one is in the area of redistricting for the Colorado General Assembly. This would establish a more fair process for establishing redistricting maps. It would include the appointment of independent commissions that would be politically balanced, actual map drawing criteria, and limits on the roles of political parties in the course of redistricting, the redistricting process, and then the establishment of ethical and transparency guidelines. The Metro Mayor's Caucus and other local government advocacy organizations advocated for city councils and political bodies, local government political bodies, to consider endorsing amendments Y and Z, and therefore in the course of that, council became aware of that and asked staff to place this resolution on the ballot for your consideration, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. So is there any questions and or action by City Council? Mr. McGough.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, I think, Mr. Devon, I think it was actually unanimous in coming out of both chambers, not nearly unanimous, but fully unanimous. The only measure that I can recall ever to come out of the legislature with 0 negative votes. So I'm proud that we can move ahead with this and to support it. Accordingly, I move that R 18-103, a resolution endorsing amendments Y and Z for Fair Maps Colorado redistricting reforms, be approved.
Okay, the motion is for approval. All members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 noes with Mayor Williams absent, so that motion carries. Okay, next up we have Resolution R 18-104, a resolution opposing Amendment 74. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, before you tonight is a resolution that would actually oppose Amendment 74, which is the attempt to amend the Colorado Constitution to drastically limit state and local government services. What Amendment 74 proposes to do is to establish through I think, vague and frankly not very well written language, would establish regulations and processes which would obligate local governments to unfairly high compensation to individuals who have been who believe they have been impacted by local government actions. There are several examples of actions, here in Arvada that could have a significant impact on the community and on taxpayers if Amendment 74 is approved. I'll illustrate a couple of those examples. One is the area and transportation projects, and we had a speaker advocate for our local measure here for the issuance of bonds for the widening of Ralston Road and the West 72nd Avenue grade separation. In those cases, there are going to be impacts to property owners, and we already have state and federal laws on the books, requirements on the books that would require us to work with those property owners and make sure that we fairly compensate them. In fact, we have a history, this City Council has a history of approving settlements with property owners who have been impacted by these kinds of actions in a way that's very fair, and very direct in terms of supporting the impact on the property owners. Under Amendment 74, the range of property owners who could seek compensation would be widened at a cost that would definitely impact our taxpayers. And I think when you think about the future construction of the Jefferson Parkway, I think you could also see some pretty significant impacts as a result of that. In terms of the Land Development Code update that the City Council is working on right now, again, as you contemplate changes to the Land Development Code, which you believe will best fit the values of this community, there could be situations where property owners might believe that any updates to the Land Development Code could be detrimental to them. In fact, we have a number of people who are attending the Land Development Code update meetings, the open houses, and the other activities that we have, who actually live in the adjacent unincorporated county areas and are watching how we make decisions on the Land Development Code update, because it could either enhance or diminish, in their opinion, the value of their land. And I think under the language of Amendment 74, they could certainly make a case for some sort of compensation. And then finally, our voters in 2016 gave us the opportunity to opt out of state law that was enacted by Senate Bill 152 in terms of broadband. And as we work within our community and with our strategic partners to lay conduit to strategic locations within our community, there's a belief that that broadband services, those companies that have offered broadband services, could look at that as a potential taking or a potential cause for compensation. So for all these reasons, and for the fact that this is a state amendment that people that advocate for local government services believe is not very well written, vaguely stated, and potentially very dangerous and very expensive to local governments, the resolution has been developed, and staff is recommending that the council approve the resolution to oppose Amendment 74.
Okay. There any questions or action by council? Councilmember McGough.
Yes, I make a motion, and I'd like to speak to the motion just for a moment, too. I move that R18-104, a resolution opposing Amendment 74, an attempt to amend the Colorado Constitution to drastically limit state and local government service at a high cost to taxpayers, be approved.
Okay, so the motion is for approval of the resolution opposing Amendment 74. If all members will vote, Mr. McGough, if you'll give me your vote.
Yes, I would like to just speak to it for a moment, to say, at least for me, as Mr. Devon indicated, there's a process. If there truly is the diminishment of the property, for example, the taking of property, there is an established process for compensating the owner. This is a very nebulous proposal and constitutional where it's ambiguous with lots of undefined terms and would only cause mischief if it should be approved. So I will be voting accordingly.
Okay, all members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 noes with Mayor Williams absent, so that resolution passes. Okay, next up, we have Resolution R 18-105, a resolution endorsing the Arvada Fire Protection District ballot question 6E. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, we have actually a presentation that has been prepared by the Arvada Fire Protection District. It's on our display, and Board Member, Fire Chief, and Board Member Bob Loveridge, Fire Chief John Greer, and Board Member Jim Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. Devon. Thank you, Mr. Marriott.
Welcome.
And members of council. I'm Bob Loveridge, President of the District Board. With me, I also have Director Jim Whitfield and our Fire Chief, Chief John Greer. And I also want to recognize our firefighters from Station 1 here tonight. They have kindly come down to support us, and I appreciate all of their hard work and always going above and beyond in their call of duty. Tonight, I wanted to, first of all, announce to you that the Arvada Fire Protection District Board has passed unanimously a resolution in favor of 3F. We recognize that the street maintenance and improvements are an extremely important part of fire protection and ambulance service within this community. Your project on 72nd is very important to us because of the ability for us to go under the railroad track would certainly help, not only when there is a train there and delaying us with being able to respond, but also once the train is gone, the congestion that goes with it and our inability to move through that congestion. 58th Avenue is also important for us. The firefighters try to avoid going down 58th and Ralston Road here because it is so narrow and so hard to maneuver the big trucks down through there. And I just confirmed that with our firefighters. Chief Greer has told me that for many times, but while I was sitting there, is this true, guys? And they said, absolutely. So we have passed that resolution. At this time, I'd like to turn the time over to Fire Chief John Greer.
Well, thank you, Council, for letting us come and do a presentation tonight. I will tell you 3F should have been implemented when I was a kid. 58th Avenue hasn't changed, and I was a kid a long time ago. And so that should have been fixed a long time ago, and now you guys are hopefully going to get this through and get that taken care of because it's a problem to drive. You drive in the gutter down 58. That's not how we should be going. What I'm here to talk about tonight is ballot issue 6E. And the first thing we have is a video that can do a lot better job than I can of explaining this. So with that, I'll hopefully, do I do this? Nope. Oh, well, anyway. I'll move on without it, so we'll just get back to the slideshow. So what this is about is there's an amendment that was put in to effect in 1982 called the Gallagher Amendment. And what it did is it divided the property tax burden in the state, 55% for non-residential and 45% for. And with that, the non-residential assessment rate was set at, which is commercial mainly here, at 29%, and that's fixed. And what that means is we use every $100,000. For every $100,000, you're not assessed on that full $100,000 in value. You're assessed on 29% of that, or $29,000. Then that's taken times our mill levy, and that's how we determine what we get out of a commercial building. The residential was designed to both go up and down, and it started at 21%. Today, it's dropped in 1983 is 21%. Today, it's 7.2%. And so what that means is we went from paying on $21,000 in assessed value for every $100,000 to $7,200. And that's a significant reduction. And next year, and we'll talk about it, that's forecast to go down to 6.11. And there's some solutions they're even working on that could drop it into the high fives. And if that happens, we would have, starting in 2020, whoop, I don't know why it's moving. Who knows what I did when I sent it over. But anyway, I should have let Jim fix it for me. But starting in 2020, we're going to lose in projected revenues $3.3 million, and by 2025, that number is going to go to $3.7 million a year. I can tell you it costs $1.75 million to operate a fire station, so you can see the effect that has on us. So what the board did is, and they're being proactive in this, is they put an issue on the ballot for this November that would stabilize our funding resources for the foreseeable future. And they're being proactive in that it isn't affecting us today. It didn't affect us in 16, but it will in 20. And that's coming, and we know that. And so they're being proactive to acting on it now. That's unusual. We usually go and we ask when we're already in dire straits, and now the board is getting ahead of it. And so what they're doing is giving us a tool that would stabilize our funding beginning in 2020 and beyond. And I want to remind everybody that while we've got increases in 16 and 18, and I say that because of the way the assessment cycle works, it's every other year they reassess, but in 2012, I think it was, we went down 7% because the value of homes went down. It goes in cycles, and so understand, while we're seeing this boom right now in value of homes, you can look back at history and see this is going to be short-lived and it's going to go the other way. And when it does, if we're at 6.11 or less in the residential assessment rate, that'll devastate us. And so we're trying to get ahead of that. And so the way this thing works is, this is the simplest way. I did it so I can understand it, which means probably everybody else can, even an Arvada West graduate. I went to Arvada, so Bob and I have a little thing between us. But anyway, for every $100,000 in value today, the top line is what you're doing. Like I say, you pay on the residential assessment rate of 7.2%. So your assessed value for every $100,000 is $7,200. You take that times our mill levy, it's 14.71, but when you do the math, you do it this way, it comes out to $106 right now that we're getting for every 100,000. The bottom one reflects what's going to happen if this doesn't pass and the 6.11% goes in. You're paying on $6,110 for every 100,000 times our mill levy, you get $90 for every 100,000. That $16 difference is $3.3 million starting in 2020. That's where that comes from. So what the board would like to do are the second and third items there. If it goes to 6.11%, and I say if, I don't know why it's going to, they have to act on it by law, then it goes to the same, the assessed value is $6,110, but our mill levy would be allowed to go up to 17.34 to get us that same 106 that we're getting today. The other way is if home values go down and the residential assessment rate goes up, then the assessed value would be $8,000, and our mill levy would actually go down from where it is today to 13.24. The idea of getting that same $106 regardless of what happens with the residential assessment rate. So in a nutshell, that's what the board put on the ballot. Now the ballot, you know how ballots read, a lawyer wrote them, and so it doesn't read that simple, but that's what it is. And so, but it does, the one thing that does not increase is that $106. Regardless of what happens, we're going to collect $106 for every 100,000. So that's the goal of this. So what we're concerned about is maintaining emergency response time, keeping our training at the level it is, growing demands for services. It's not only calls. We've had an 18% increase in the number of responses, but we've also got tremendous growth. And everybody goes, oh, Candelas, and they point there. Well, let's not forget there's a bunch of subdivisions around Candelas. It's not just them. But also, we have Station 1 here today that serves Old Town Arvada. It seems like every lot in Arvada is being built on. And so the growing demands and growth aren't just in that northwest part of town, they're citywide. And we have to be able to fund that. And the only way to do that is have more income. And if we don't have the 3.3 million, we're going to basically take a step back, protect what we have, and not increase anything else. And so we look at a station in Candelas, we look at adding another ambulance, which we desperately need. Medic 1 can tell you that. Then we can't do that. And so we have to be able to keep up with growth, we have to have this increase in 2020 with the 3.3 million. So with that, that's pretty much the presentation. And I got this cool little guy dancing around. If you get bored, you can watch him. But I was wondering if there's any questions.
Okay. Start with Councilmember McGough.
Yes, thank you, Chief. It was all set until one of your last statements when you said, and that's we'll be looking at an increase in 2020. I thought this whole language and the ballot issue was to stabilize the revenue and stabilize the amount received at the $106.
Right.
So you used the term increase in 2020.
The $3.3 million increase, the revenue that we're losing.
Oh, so it would be,
Yeah.
that would be
We're
above,
capturing that
it
revenue.
would be capturing it, but it would not be.
That 106 would stay the same.
Okay, but the stabilizing is the key
Right.
element. Okay.
And understand the reason it isn't till 2020. In 2019, it's not a reassessment year. And so for us, and so we'll be collecting virtually, we just got our estimate the other day, we're going up 0.5% in our property tax. And so that's what's happening in 19. 20 takes in puts into effect the reassessment that happens in 19 that we collect in 20. And so that's why the 3.3 million projected revenue that we would be losing if this doesn't pass starts in 2020.
Okay, and so with this measure, if it should pass, if you look at the years beyond 2020 and look, say, to 2030, is it reasonable to expect that that stabilizing point of $106 is still going to be adequate? Or would we be looking at a ballot issue at some time in the future, whenever that might be?
I can't answer that. I don't have it depends on what happens with the market and the home values. And so I can tell you, I'm retiring in 3.5 years. It's going to be good for that. But after that, our forecast right now says we should be good for 10 years. And so, but the fire department's going to have to visit it again in that 10 years and see if they need to do something.
Okay, so this measure would stabilize it for the
foreseeable future.
Foreseeable future.
Right.
So, but it's not a forever kind of thing. Likely not a forever kind of thing.
Likely not forever, I would guess.
Okay, thank you.
And none of our mill levy increases have ever been forever.
Yeah.
So.
Mr. Jones.
I was almost going to push the wrong button. Are there any other questions?
I do have other questions, so if you have a question, you can ask it. If you'd like to reserve the motion, you may do that as well.
I would like to reserve the motion.
Okay, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Well, actually, I'll make a comment after the motion's been put on the floor.
Mr. Jones.
Okay, great. Well, I would like to make a motion then. I move that our 18-105, a resolution endorsing the Arvada Fire Protection District ballot question E, be approved. And I'd like to, I'm sorry, 6E, thank you, be approved. And then I'll just like to speak to this for just a second here. First and foremost, thank you, Chief Greer, for coming tonight and sharing this with us and with the community. Secondly, I want to thank Station 1, Station 2, Station 3, Station 4, all of them. Our first responders in this community are outstanding. I've had the privilege of riding along with some of our police officers and had the chance to interact with some of your personnel, your firefighters and paramedics. And I got to tell you that they're incredible. The way that they interact with the community, the way that they treat the patients, the people who are in severe need. It's no question in my mind that public safety is paramount to our community, and I truly appreciate as a citizen that they're there. And I appreciate the fact that, that your board had the foresight to look at this issue so that funding for the foreseeable future would be secure. So that you can do the things that will continue to increase public safety in Arvada, continue to educate and train your personnel so that they can take care of me when I need it. And so for that reason and many, many, many more, I will absolutely be voting for this, given that I presented the motion. But again, I can't say it enough how appreciative I am to the Arvada Fire Department for the work that they do every single day on behalf of the Arvada citizens.
Thank you.
Mr. Pfeiffer, you had a comment to make?
I did. You know, Chief, somebody asked me today, I was being interviewed in a magazine, and somebody asked me, well, why did I run for city council? And I'll tell you, when I moved here in roughly 2002, 2001, my wife was a fourth generation Arvadan. I had to move here to marry her. She said there was no way we would get married if I didn't move here. So I lived on 84th and Benton, and I lived on 84th. And two things made this community special. One was an officer used to drive by and wave every day, and a few years later, his name was Scott Regan, him and I were coaching baseball together, unplanned, and we became friends. The second thing was, your station was at 5 up there in Lake Arbor, would pull over and let my oldest son, who's now 21 and soon to be a police officer as well, who was 5 at the time, maybe, I can't think of the math right now, but he was young, and pulled over and allowed my son a little time with your firefighters and to be in awe of your fire truck. And you know, that experience alone inspired me that I made the right decision, obviously to marry my wife, but two, to live in this community, Arvada. And I said it earlier with the school district, but you know, I know the fire district creates a culture and a sense of place and a sense of community that is unwavering in this community. And it was an inspiration for me 15, 18 years later. Never thought I'd be sitting up here. But you know, I wanted to be part of something special. And I think this time it is for us to give something back to the fire district, who has supported the growth of our community, which we've seen in the past 15, 18 years, 20, 30,000 people come into this community, the density that we're creating, the sprawl we're creating. There are so many things going on top of what David said. But you know, it's time that we support our firefighters, who in return every day put their lives on the line for ourselves and our community, along with our police officers. And I want to add to David's experience as well. I've noticed how close the partnership is between the city police officers to the firefighters. And I can't find any other district or any other city that is as tight as those two agencies work together, and how willing, and the things you will do and the innovation you two to do together. I want that to continue. And so I feel it's so important that this initiative gets passed, and that I will be supporting 6E to the motion. So thank you very much for all you do, all the firefighters, all the police officers. I want to thank you all for what you do today.
Okay, if all members will please vote. All members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 noes, so that resolution passes as well. Okay, next up, we have ordinances on first reading. Mr. Pfeiffer, would you like to do that for us today?
Oh, sure. I wasn't ready for that, but yeah.
Would you like me to call on
No,
someone else?
I can do it if you'd like. First reading. I move that Council Bill, let me start over. I move that ordinance on first reading 2018-416, which is Council Bill 18-039, an ordinance amending sections 102-206 of Chapter 102, Utilities of the Arvada City Code pertaining to wastewater user rates. Also, Council Bill 18-040, an ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 102, Utilities of the Arvada City Code pertaining to water user rates. Also, Council Bill 18-041, an ordinance repealing and reenacting sections 74-31, land use fees of Article 2, Community Development Department service fees of Chapter 74, Planning and Development of the Arvada City Code. And also Council Bill 18-042, an ordinance certifying the City of Arvada mill levy of for 2018 for the Board of County Commissioners for Jefferson and Adams counties. And lastly, Council Bill 18-043, an ordinance appropriating funds for fiscal year 2019, all public hearing to be set for October 29, 2018 at 6:30 p.m.
Okay. So the motion is for approval. If all members will please vote. And that passes 6-0 with Mayor Williams absent. So before we start our public hearings, I'd like to take just a quick brief recess. We can stand in place if anybody needs to use the restroom. They may do that too. So we'll see you back in a couple minutes. Dot, let me know when you're ready. Okay. Okay, so I'll open the public hearing on Council Bill 18-038, an ordinance amending various sections of the Land Development Code pertaining to self-storage. Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. As a reminder, on April 2nd of this year, council imposed a temporary moratorium on the establishment of self-storage businesses while staff was given time to evaluate the locations of their allowed uses. And then on August 13th of this year, council provided direction to the staff to remove the allowed uses from PUD I and PUD BP zoning districts. Following the institution of the moratorium, there were discussions in association with the Land Development Code update, which council knows has been ongoing for months. And the plan is to present this ordinance tonight to make certain changes to the zones that self-storage facilities would be permitted in, and then eventually when the Land Development Code is approved, hopefully in the summer of 2019, that council can take another look at it at that point in time. In the interim, the ordinance tonight, staff is recommending that self-storage facilities be limited to the I-1 light industrial and the I-2 heavy industrial districts. Designating these districts for self-storage facilities will avoid potential conflicts with nearby residential areas. Council also may consider permitting other zone districts for self-storage facilities in the future prior to the Land Development Code revisions next summer, should you choose. But tonight, staff is recommending that we just limit it to those two districts as previously noted.
Okay. So I have people have signed up to make a public comment here. Mr. Daly, this is not quasi-judicial, so I do not need to swear people in.
That's
is that
correct.
Okay. So I'll call on Mr. Greg Bradbury. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss this issue. I'd just like to end up giving a brief history on as it pertains to our particular area. I probably need to introduce myself. I'm Greg Bradbury, 8775 Blue Mountain Drive, Arvada, Colorado. I'm a partner in Church Ranch Companies. My partner, Charlie McKay, is here tonight with me, and we are the developers of Candelas, just to give a background. Candelas, what we end up having there is a large 1,500-acre master plan community that has a bunch of residential, a bunch of housing, a bunch of commercials. And what we ended up doing, this is an illustrative site plan that we used for marketing purposes. And it was prepared back in the beginning of 17. We had a self-storage company under contract, Guardian here, who actually developed a 120,000 square foot facility over in Westminster near our Church Ranch Corporate Center. And we attracted them to locate here near King Soopers. This was early in 17. What ended up happening subsequent to this is the public storage facility down on Indiana was going forward at that point in time, and this facility, they decided not to go forward because there's too many self-storage units going on in the city, which is understandable. There is what subsequently happened to the Indiana public storage is it wasn't passed, and what we ended up doing was, and tonight I'm actually talking to you on behalf of Jefferson Center Metropolitan District Number 1, the government that ends up supplying all the services to this entire Candelas area out here. We actually are about 5,000 acres within Arvada, of which about 2,000 acres is responsible for providing infrastructure. I'm the president of that organization. And so when we lost the Guardian storage facility within our district, we didn't mind public storage going forward on the east side of Indiana, because that's also in our district. We wrote a letter to City Council supporting public storage at that time because that meant about $9.5 million of bonding capability to our district, because commercial, it generates so much more property tax value than residential does. It's huge for commercial development to get the infrastructure out here for this new community. When the public storage facility was defeated, that affected our ability to build infrastructure out here. We were counting on that $9.5 million to proceed with areas around King Soopers, this King Soopers North area, the Exempla, which is SEL area, also our Candelas Point area out at 72 and Candelas Parkway. What we had to do was, as developers, loan the money to our district to develop this, since we didn't have the $9.5 million out there. What we're asking tonight is that, and as you can see, that this facility and all of this up in the north side of Big Dry Creek is very removed from any residential. This is part of our residential over here. There's Jefferson Parkway, that's a 300-foot right-of-way between any of our commercial development. And on the east side of Indiana, that is all Jefferson County, and it's horse stables and landscaping yards and that type of thing. There's actually, the only other residential is in Whisper Creek, way far away. So what we would ask is that if there is a way that self-storage could be looked at and allowed in this area, it would help the financing and future development of infrastructure for Arvada in this area. $10 million is nothing to sneeze at as far as infrastructure financing goes. Commercial is very hard to get out in this area. You know, that's just, we developed Church Ranch Corporate Center. It's on US 36. We still have land there that isn't developed yet. We built all the buildings there, built them spec, and it's very difficult to get commercial. And a self-storage facility here out in this area is still needed. There is one going down on Highway 72 that's under construction right now, but there is an additional need for a self-storage area in this area. And we just request that you might consider looking at this, having staff look at this, or seeing if there's a way to allow self-storage to occur in this specific area. It's not, I realize you're dealing with zoning on a citywide issue. But I just wanted to point out the fact that losing the public storage facility had on our particular development.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll open up for council questions and or action. Mr. Jones.
So, Mr. Devon, could you just clarify for us again because as I look at the wording of the motion, it doesn't specifically identify the zoning, the industrial zoning components that I thought I heard in Mr. Daly's explanation.
Yes, so let me explain that. You're right, Councilmember Jones. The motion itself just talks about amending various sections of the Land Development Code, but clearly the ordinance itself is very specific when you look at the red line strikeover version about what it is permitted. And so I think staff certainly is understanding of the request made by the JCMD district. However, staff's recommendation tonight is to act on this ordinance alone, and then staff can study the request that's been made by Mr. Bradbury and JCMD tonight, and then come back to the council. We don't need to wait until the Land Development Code is complete. We can certainly study that and get back to council, but for tonight, the recommendation is to stay just with the ordinances that's been presented.
Thank you for that clarification. And that's what I was going to ask, is if we could direct staff to look into this. I think it's a valid question that probably, for me at least, deserves a little bit more understanding and again, recommendation from staff as to how to proceed. But if there's no other questions, I'm prepared to make a motion.
I see no other questions.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Bradbury, for coming. I think it's, like I said, I think it's a very important question that you raised for us to consider. With that, I move that Council Bill 18-038, an ordinance amending various sections of the Land Development Code pertaining to self-storage, be approved on final reading numbered 4655 and ordered published by title only.
Okay, so the motion is for approval. All members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 nos, so that passes. Thank you. Okay, next, I will open the public hearing on Candela's Triangle at Candela's Medical Filing Number 1 Preliminary Development Plan, generally located at the southwest corner of Candela's Parkway and 91st Place. Mr. Daly.
It is quasi-judicial.
Okay. So, Mr. Devon, do you want to lead this off?
Yes. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, this presentation will be led off by comments from Planning Manager Rob Smetana.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. The applicant tonight is requesting preliminary development plan approval for a multiple commercial building development on approximately 2.5 acres, generally located at the southwest corner of Candela's Parkway and 91st Place. The applicant has requested modification of development standards to allow for an 87-foot setback from the center line of an arterial street when a 100-foot setback is required by the Land Development Code. Modifications have also been requested from the front and side setbacks for between 5 and 10 feet of relief from the development standards. Staff has reviewed the modification and is supportive of those requests. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the preliminary development plan based upon the approval criteria found in the Land Development Code. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary development plan at their September 4th meeting. I have received the signed posting log and affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for a presentation and questions, and planner Jeremiah Bebo is also here to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll make the posting log and affidavit a permanent part of the record. For anyone who'd like to speak on this item, if you'd please raise your hand and swear or affirm after me. The applicant, are you going to make a presentation?
Certainly around to answer questions.
Okay, if you'd raise your hand and swear or affirm after me that the testimony you're about to give in this manner is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you. Why don't you come on up and make your presentation.
Is there a slideshow, Jeremiah? I wasn't. Sorry, I'm not prepared to make a presentation.
You can make it really short then if you
I
like.
will make it really short. The site plan that we've been working on with staff for the last 6 months consists of 3 buildings, access parking. It's pretty straightforward. We've really spent a lot of time working on the engineering of the site. It's a complicated, small piece of property because it's in the shape of a triangle, which makes it difficult. And there's some complicated issues with the Kinnear ditch and the municipality of Westminster and the shared use of that ditch and a lot of other easements. But I felt like we've been successful working with staff and the planning department on coming up with an attractive looking buildings and a site that is circulates well and is efficient and will serve the neighborhood going forward.
Okay.
You've had a chance to look at this presentation, or are you seeing this for the first time? Am I going?
We do have in our packet a staff report, so
great.
We've seen that. You're welcome to make any presentation you'd like, or as brief as you'd like. So
I'm finished.
You're good. Okay, sounds good. Let me ask: is there any member of the public out there who would like to make comment on this particular proposal? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment part of this hearing. And we will invite City Council questions or actions. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marriott. Where is that ditch in that drawing? Can you point that out to me? I was trying to look through the drawings.
Yeah, it may. The easement area may not be shown, and I do have my civil engineer, Jacob McMillan, here to answer any technical questions. But it is along the row of parking on, I guess I would consider the bottom side of the slide. Can't really say that that's south, but it's in that drive lane. And actually one of the more complicated items with this site was shifting that easement to be in the drive lane to the north of those trash enclosures, because you can't have a structure over the easement area. So there's also some grading issues and some retaining wall issues. Long story short, the easement is now in the drive lane.
And what about that corner of Building B, as in boy, on the northwest corner? It just seems really close. I can't tell by these drawings how close that is. How's that look really with the sidewalk?
Well, so that what that's up against is not the sidewalk. It's a retaining wall. It
So
looks
it's
like
above?
a sidewalk.
It's above?
Yes, it's above.
And then I think I found a drawing, it's about 3 feet, then it's the sidewalk. And is that a detached sidewalk or attached? I don't know if staff knows if that's detached or
That's
attached.
a detached sidewalk.
It's detached? Okay. And so okay, I think that just the coloration, I'm trying to look at these drawings too. So that's a detached, goes along there, so there's about a 3 foot between the retaining wall and the sidewalk?
Well, the retaining walls don't start until kind of closer to the, and Jacob can correct me if I'm wrong, closer to the corner of the intersection. And so you have a 5 foot detached sidewalk, and then landscaping space in between the detached sidewalk and then the buildings. The buildings are set back 10 feet from those property lines. Code requires 20. But based on, like the applicant has stated, the building constraints of the site and being able to accommodate enough parking, we believe that a 10-foot setback was appropriate.
And then last question on building C as in Charlie, on the egress ingress for that parking lot. I know that we're doing a variance on how close that building is to the center line. Did we confirm that there's a clear visual to see up Candelas? It's kind of high speed there, so I worry about a bend and pulling out and a building's blocking the view and brush or trees. Has that been reviewed, the landscaping plan for that?
It has, yeah, and the traffic engineers do review the landscaping plans when doing their review, and they've given their approval of everything related to this access as well. And that is a right in, right out restricted.
So I don't see the landscaping plan, so I hope, we usually see them, so I don't know why we didn't see them this time. But I just want to make sure there's no trees or anything that's causing issues.
No, and they are required to put their site distance triangles on all of their landscaping plans,
Okay.
and they have been reviewed for conformance.
Okay. If there are not any other questions,
I believe Mr. Jones has a
Okay.
question. Mr. Jones?
Yes. So these are medical offices?
It's a mixture of commercial uses, some restaurant, some retail, and some
Oh, okay.
medical.
Well, I was just looking at the staff report here in the meeting notes for the neighborhood meeting, and it looked like there were a lot of folks were asking probably a lot of questions about what the uses were going to be. And I wasn't, when I saw the title of it was medical, and so I just wanted to get some clarity around the use exactly.
Yeah, that's a little misleading because most of this project is the Exempla Hospital, the SCL across the street. And actually, we're deed restricted from doing anything than really more than ancillary medical uses, dentist office, things like that.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And then from going back, I just looked here. So from a parking perspective, we're parked correctly?
Yeah, we're at 107 spaces, I believe, and the requirement is 87.
So if there were two, and I don't know if this is an appropriate question, so Mr. Daly, you can shut me down if this isn't right, but if there happened to be two restaurants, how would we typically park a restaurant?
So restaurants are parked usually based on the number of seats. We have done usually, if the applicant hasn't been able to tell us how many seats they have, we usually are parked on a rate of 5 spaces per 1,000 GFA. And based off of not necessarily knowing the exact tenant of this location, we did park it at the higher rate, which is that 5 per 1,000, which is the parking ratio for retail. It's a higher office ratio as well. So we're confident that it is parked for a variety of different uses, commercially considered anyways.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by council about any action by council?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, Mr. Pfeiffer.
First, I did find the landscaping, so I must have scanned past that, so my apologies. I move that Candelas Triangle at Candelas Medical Filing 1 Preliminary Development Plan, generally located at the southwest corner of Candelas Parkway and West 91st Place, be approved, subject to the attached updated condition of approval. This motion is based on the finding of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Okay, so the motion is for approval. All members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 nos, with Mayor Williams being absent, so that passes. Next, I'll open the public hearing on Holistic Health and Fitness Park Preliminary Development Plan located at 10275 and 10375 West 55th Avenue. Mr. Daly.
Actually, I was just indicating that's a quasi-judicial matter for you. That's all.
Got it. Thank you. So, Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, again, Planning Manager Rob Smetana will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. This is a city request for a preliminary development plan approval for a new 8.6 acre park located at approximately 55th and Kipling Parkway. This park is the result of a collaborative effort between the city and Red Rocks Community College. There are no modifications to development standards that are proposed, and therefore staff is recommending approval of the preliminary development plan based upon the approval criteria found in the Land Development Code. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this plan at their September 4th meeting. We have received the signed posting log and affidavit, and they are in order. We do have Parks representatives here to answer any questions, and Cheryl Drake is also here from our office if you have any questions.
Okay, so I'll make the posting log and affidavit a permanent part of the record, and do I need to swear, okay, so we'll, if you'll raise your right hand, please, and swear or affirm after me. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mayor and members of City Council, we're here tonight on a city-initiated project that's been in the works for a couple of years. Here tonight also are representatives of the city's Park Advisory Committee that are in the audience, as well as representatives from our partner, Red Rocks Community College. Dr. Michelle Haney and administration and staff are here to also answer any questions that council might have. This effort is the true product of a great collaboration on a very interesting idea. I have a brief presentation to give you just to set the context of it. The details of the presentation will be provided by Matthew Whipple, who is our consulting partner from DHM Design. Just to set the biggest scale, the park planning context for this is really follows closely the Kipling Station Area Plan. That's one of 3 station plans contained in the comprehensive plan. Just by perspective, there's a T that marks the transit stop at Kipling Ridge. Red Rocks Community College is in the kind of the blue-purple in the north area. The residential area is Arvada, was developed by Embry Partners. South of where the railroad tracks was completed about 5 years ago. Those areas north of the tracks on the far east side are under construction right now. So much as possible because of the partnership that exists with Red Rocks and the opening that's reflected there, and the opening of Lee Street, which was recently completed. As Red Rocks College is one kind of icon that you see, the outline of the park area is immediately adjacent to Red Rocks. And as was mentioned, it's an 8.6 acre parcel. How we got to this point, through an extensive public participation process that involved a number of public open houses in areas and neighborhoods that were within a half-mile of this proposed park, as well as a close ongoing participation and collaboration with Red Rocks. The focus of our efforts took most of 2017, produced the drawing and plan that will be presented by Mr. Whipple, and it closely aligns with what came forward through the public process. So with that, I wanted to introduce Matthew Whipple, principal with DHM Design.
Thank you, Mr. Whipple. And I think being my inexperienced self, I've messed up the swearing in. So I know I have a couple members of the public who'd like to speak on this, as well as you, Mr. Whipple. If all of you would please raise your hands and let me swear you all in, and then and anybody who plans to speak on this, if you please would, and then we'll get that all done at once. So if you'll all swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whipple, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Council. So I'll try to keep this fairly high level, as I'm sure you've all seen this already. Overall site plan, this site utilizes the highest point of this park site. It is a difficult park site. South boundary along West 55th, so you've got Red Rocks Community College to the south, and you've got Kipling Parkway to the east. We would share the parking lot with Red Rocks Community College, and this is the park site where you, or the site where you see the existing water tanks, decommissioned water tanks currently. Overall park site provides outstanding view corridors, 360 degrees in all directions. It's just absolutely amazing. Again, it sits at the very top of this site. Easy access to Red Rocks Community College, and it provides a unique educational park experience. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about 2 areas. The upper area, the upper plaza area, we would have shade structures, a labyrinth, reflexology path, some seating areas with some nice landscaping around it, play structures, sensory panels. I think it's important to point out that even though this is a difficult site, we would provide ADA accessibility through the site, boulder seat walls, and educational monumentation. And then we would also provide an outdoor amphitheater. We would take advantage of the steep grades on the site to provide terraced boulder seating, a large plaza area, again, more educational monumentation, pedestrian lighting, and we would also provide ADA accessibility to this element. Thank you.
Okay. So we've got a couple members of the public who'd like to speak. I'll call you up. Brandon Figliolino, if you come on up. I did see it on the second whack at it. I did get you sworn in, so thank you. Welcome. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I will be very brief. I am really excited to see this park for multiple reasons. It expands our open space portfolio, and it also aligns with the master plan that was passed in 2015 that brings more specialty parks to our city for our residents to use. So I highly support it and hope you do too.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also have Dr. Michelle Haney. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, City Council, for allowing us to come forward. You know, we've had a wonderful partnership between Arvada and Red Rocks, and I look at this addition and I'm thinking, wow, this really does bring community into the college, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I brought with me 2 of our vice presidents and 2 of our faculty, and we've all been involved in looking at what might happen, and we're excited about it. You probably are aware that the Arvada campus, which you all helped us with, has home to all of our health programs, including holistic health. And this is ideal to help us further those programs. But I think beyond that, it welcomes the community to join with us in looking at well-being and the total individual, both from a learning and work and live and play, and what we can do together. So I think this is a great opportunity for sharing some resources. So thank you for being able to speak, and thank you for the opportunity to take a look at this pocket park.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. Any other member of the public who'd like to speak on this? Come on up. And if you would give us your name and your address and tell us what you have to say.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I'm Tom Fletcher, 5320 West 67th Avenue here in Arvada. My wife and I have been involved in this park since the inception of it, giving input from the Tai Chi community. And although I can't speak for the yoga people who probably aren't here tonight, it's a health and wellness area that has been overlooked, but this little park will be really the crown jewel to practice these 2 things outside. And we really appreciate your support. And thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. Any other member of the public who'd like to testify, please come on up. And if you'd give us your name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Don Wood, 10463 West 54th Place in Arvada. I'm currently serving as the president of the HOA of the Skyline Estates, which is your neighbors to the directly of the west. And the reason I'm speaking here is I have 2 hats. One as an individual, because I'm right across the street from the entrance of Red Rocks, and the other as the president. So I'll put my hat on as the president. I was contacted by several of our members once the mailing went out, I think it was last month, about this park, and I had several negative comments about it. Mainly, those negative comments, which I wanted to pass on to you, is that they're concerned about the homeless, and the homeless using this venue, which is right next to this light rail stop, as a place for them to camp out. So I wanted to pass that along to you. Now, as president, I can't take a position on that because this lays outside of our community. So I just wanted to pass that along. What I did do with our community, though, is I had our management company send out an email blast to all of our 325 homes that if they wished, I put in there both, John, your website address. I don't know if you got any comments from anybody.
Not yet.
And I also put in the comments for the parks to make, if anybody wanted to make additional comments. But I felt as that is my duty to go ahead and communicate that and leave the venue of that communication open to our community. Now, as just a private homeowner, I would also, in my experience also, I would have a little bit of question about the security and how that park is to be managed at night, because it is a light rail stop. And the reason I say that is because I also am on the vestry at St. John's Episcopal Cathedral downtown. And across from our cathedral, we own a piece of property at St. Dominic's Park. That park has a labyrinth in it for everyone in the community to use. But we actually have that gated. At night, we have that closed. And I would say let's not be naive about where things are going with transients and homeless people, because one of our section's duty in our campus downtown, this is kind of weird, but they have to pick up needles and drug paraphernalia from our church campus every single day. And this will happen on this location. So what I would look for from a community standpoint is to have a plan addressed for this, and to maybe even thinking about some type of security lighting, additional security lighting, and possibly fencing in certain areas to give this a more secure location. But beyond that, the park itself, the whole concept of the holistic park, I'm extremely ambivalent about. So I just want to make those comments. Okay,
great. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Anyone else in the audience who'd like to make any comments? Okay, so I'll close the public comment portion of this hearing and invite the applicant or the engineer up to speak to any of those if they care to, or not if they don't. Whatever you'd like.
Just to address the concern that Mr. Woods brought up, so the part of the review was with the police department. Their environmental design review really does help us inform on potential problems on gathering spots. So an element of that was taken very much into account in the design part. In terms of where we go from here, I know all of us have talked about and will be ever mindful of how all of our parks are used, and as problems develop, working with the police department on the specific things. I do think the park will be used. It will be the closest park to one of our light rail stops. I know our police department is already focused on that, as well as our park staff too. So it'll be something I think that unfolds over time.
Okay, great, thank you. So with that, I'll open it up to council questions and or action. Start with Mr. McGough.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question for Mr. Rusink. I'm wondering, from the park, one of the things that I like there is it appears there's a walkway out to the sidewalk, from the park to the sidewalk on the west side of Kipling.
Yes.
Following that north and then crossing the street, you can get on to the Van Bibber Trail, and east over to Independence, or west to Indiana, I guess. But I'm wondering, is there a sidewalk along Lee Street going down to Ridge Road, the Art Plaza and so forth? I can't tell from my drawing. Is there a sidewalk all the way down Lee Street?
There is one, yes.
There is. So that makes the park as a destination, but also it could be a starting point for, getting down to the Art Plaza or getting over to Van Bibber Trail very readily. Although it's noisy, very noisy to walk along Kipling there because of the traffic, but there is the sidewalk to do that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pfeiffer?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marriott. Question on the, I'm assuming that water tank is abandoned, right? If I remember correctly? Or I could look.
I'm sorry, the water tank?
The water tank's abandoned, right?
Abandoned?
Yeah.
Yes, it does not hold water.
Is there plans with that? Like, could we put a mural there or some art? I mean, this is a whole art district area. Is there any plans to? Hi.
Hi. Actually, the cultural master plan has identified both of those water tanks as
an
opportunity for public art of some kind, so or something interesting is
right.
what it actually states. But definitely murals are on their radar screen, as well as potential sound stage. If you go inside those tanks, the sound is quite spectacular. So those are some of the
I
ideas.
think
that
one
they
of the
had.
communities here in Colorado or somewhere did that, I heard. That
Yeah,
they turned it in.
Ridgeway up in the mountains.
Yeah, did that as a amphitheater inside. No, I think this is a great proposal, and I appreciate it. I'll say my comments for the motion.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
With regard to the lighting, I know that I don't know if this park has any planned lighting.
It does, and where we are now is, this is the preliminary development plan. So we're seeking your approval basically on the concept, the layout, and then the details like lighting and the exact placement and all will come in the final development design phase. And lighting and all is a critical part of this project.
So if you had a crystal ball and you could think forward about what the lighting might look like, and we won't hold you to it because I know you've got to go through the planning stages on that, but is it going to be more similar to the park down here near Costco that has kind of the down lighting along the pathways and it's pretty lit up at night? Or is it going to be more of the Ballard style kind of trail light, very dim?
It'll likely be a mixture of both. But
That's
it'll be
great answer.
All the lighting that we do is now LED compliant, and as well as compliant with the night sky ordinance.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And I would agree with others that have spoke. This is a great park, and I really appreciate Dr. Haney coming in with her colleagues to express their support for this, because it is another great amenity in the community for sure. So thank you for the presentation.
Councilmember Ford?
Hi, Gordon. I have a couple of questions for you. Regarding this park, is there any restricted use? Will people be able to come with dogs and children and things like that?
It's our parks are designed for people to use. So this also functions as a neighborhood park. So included in the recommendation of the design was the thoughts that the apartment residents had. So it tries to find a mix of all of those. There's not a specific area for dogs, but like any park, there'll be a trail and various connection points to other park amenities. But the primary focus of this one is really on the holistic health component.
Sure, and I like that. You mentioned that it is mentioned that there's a portalet enclosure. I'm assuming that's a porta potty?
Yes.
And that'll be there always?
Yes, and that kind of follows what we have in many of our parks where we anticipate a higher level of use, not a separate bricks and mortar bathroom, but a porta potty enclosure and frequent service of the portalets that are there.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 5, you talk about, excuse me, that the perimeter adjacent to Kipling Parkway and West 55th Avenue will receive a less manicured treatment. Would you describe what you mean by a less manicured treatment?
Less irrigation and more native, natural turf.
Mm-hmm. And will that actually be planted, or is it just what's there now?
It'll be planted.
Okay. And do you know what the distance is from the transit station to this park?
If you look at the illustration right there, the half-mile radius is just on the very north side of Red Rocks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a half mile plus just a little bit.
Okay. And one other question. I've been told that on the north side of Miller, there's no sidewalk connecting this park. Excuse me. Are there any plans in the future for a sidewalk to connect to the park?
The primary connection will be on Lee Street. And I believe that's true. If you go west of Miller, there's not current sidewalks in place. I'm not familiar enough with the redevelopment of that area to know what the plans would be as it relates to installing sidewalks in the future, though.
Mm-hmm. Would any of the planning people have any knowledge of that?
Excuse me, are you just asking, are there sidewalks there now?
No, if there were plans to put sidewalks in there. I've been told there are not sidewalks there now, connecting the north side of Miller to the park.
There's, I know there's sidewalks around Miller and going over to Oak Street, which is the typical way that people travel by foot there from the Apex Fieldhouse up the up the street on Oak and crossing over and getting to Miller or to Red Rocks College. So there's finished sidewalk there, I believe, all through that area.
There is on Lee Street and on Oak. I'm not sure what the future holds for Miller Street, though.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a question from the Skyline Estates about access from there to the park.
Councilmember Ford, we can, Councilmember Ford, we can get with staff and check on that for you and give you an answer.
Okay.
Give the council an answer.
Thank you. It's a lovely looking park, Gordon. I think it's great.
Okay, Mr. Pfeiffer?
Yeah, just a few more questions, and I'll make a motion if there aren't any others. So I did pull up Google Earth. It looks like there's a gap. There's an ADA ramp there, but no sidewalk hooked to the ADA ramp, so maybe we can make that easy and accessible. You know, talking about security and stuff, have we thought about, how are we progressing with our park ranger program? How's that going? And could this add some value to some of the concerns?
It could. We kicked off the park ranger program, and right now their focus is on the West Arvada Dog Park, Long Lake Ranch, Arvada Reservoir, and Ralston Creek Trail Corridor. The plan would be to expand the park ranger program as additional volunteers are developed. We have 7 of them right now.
So that could be a citywide program eventually. As soon as we get Mr. McGough on there, I think he'd love to walk those parks. He's such an ambassador for us. Yeah, if there's not any other questions, I'll make the motion, Mayor Pro Tem.
You may proceed.
I move that Holistic Health and Fitness Park Preliminary Development Plan located at 10275 and 10375 West 55th Avenue be approved. This motion is based on the finding of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
All members have voted. There are 6 yeses and 0 noes, with Mayor Williams being absent, so that passes. Okay, so that brings us to our second public comment period. If there's any member of the public out there who'd like to make public comment, additional public comment, you're certainly welcome now. It's like we don't, so we'll move on to reports from City Council, and looking for a motion from somebody to appoint Councilmember Ford as a liaison.
I'd like
Jones.
to make a motion. Forgot. Had one job. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Nancy Ford as the liaison to the Business Improvement Board bid in Old Town.
So the motion is to approve or appoint Councilmember Ford as the liaison to the Business Improvement District in Old Town. All members have voted, and that passes 6-0 with Mayor Williams absent. So that passes. Congratulations, Councilmember Ford. You now have another duty. Any other reports from council? Councilmember Ford.
I'd just like to welcome anyone to my meet and greet meeting this Wednesday at Trinity Presbyterian Church at 6:30 in the evening. We're going to discuss issues in District 1 and around the city. So we'd love to hear from people.
Councilmember Ford, is that Wednesday or Thursday?
Oh, that's Wednesday, and thank you for reminding me, because Thursday, you and I are going to be at a meeting at Trinity Presbyterian Church that has to do with the 2 school issues. So the 2, let's see, what was it, 5, what are they? 5A and 5B, and we're going to have members of the school district. I'm not quite sure who's going to be there, but they're going to provide information on those ballot measures. And constituents, residents of all of Arvada are welcome to ask questions, come and learn.
Okay. Any other reports from council? Okay. How about from the city manager, Mr. Devon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Members of the council, next Monday, you will receive a workshop on the Safe and Accessible Arvada program, as well as an update on JEFCOM.
Okay. City attorney, nothing from the city attorney. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.